It's now open for you to ask questions of the three speakers. I'm a bit tolerant on questions. I don't think you have to ask a question. You're permitted to make a point or a comment as long as it's relevant, and then the people on the panel can respond to your point if you want. But I am insistent that you keep it short, and you'll be cut off. We'll steal the microphone away from you if you go on too long. So 30 seconds or whatever, minute maximum, absolute maximum, 30 seconds. And I won't necessarily ask every speaker to comment on every question. We'll try and keep it moving. If your question is or comment is just to one speaker, then I'll perhaps keep it to that. And I'd also ask the speakers to be relatively brief in their responses so that we can incorporate as many as we can. There's people with microphones going around. If you want to put your hands up, I will try to do a bit of an order. So who'd like to ask the first question? Must be someone out there. Bernie. Yes, the lady there. Well done. Put your hands high though so I can see you. Thank you. And if you'd like to introduce yourself briefly.
I'm Jeanette Brockman. I'm a community member. My question is to Peter Newman. You mentioned that cities or freeways and tollways, road systems are declining, which are removing. Obviously in Sydney we have exactly the opposite problem. Community has been actively campaigning, transport experts are actively campaigning, urban planners are actively campaigning, but we're hitting a big problem with the government. What can we do in the lead up to the state election next year to stop WestConnex?
Yeah, good question, because that's why I put the story in there, that in the end it is about politics. Most of the winning of these issues, even about autonomous vehicles, and how pedestrians, do they win over AVs? It'll get down to politics, and the local governments are going to have to say, no, they're banned from this area, or we are going to toll them if they come near here. Those are the kind of decisions that'll be made, and they'll have to be won politically. And you have to win WestConnex and the change that is proposed. The City of Sydney have got a much better plan, and you've got to win it. Well, the only way you're going to win it is get out there and do what you're doing. All power to you.
Lucinda, do you want to comment on that? I mean, just in terms of your talk, it had some relevance there for what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was simpler, because I agree with you that what can we do? I mean, I think sometimes I guess I'm going to answer this a little bit differently, but I envisage a slightly different future, perhaps when we're all blockchain enabled and vote differently, where I don't feel like our representative democracy is really working in the sense of representing the best interests of the majority, and that's a very complicated area to go into. But I do think that people want to have a more and greater say over more and greater aspects of their life, because you can now personalise your coffee, your car, what kind of appliances you have. Like, you live in this hyper-personalised world, but yet there are some things that you feel like you can't make decisions about, like your neighbourhood. And so I think that kind of attitude will, once we have the technology and the systems, will shift that conversation, but that's a long way from now. And I think we do have an education point at the moment that I think that there are a lot of people who think freeways are a really, really good idea, and they're not stupid. They're just sort of coming at it from a totally different perspective about what their life is. And I think if we can talk about what really makes cities great, it would go a long way, but it's a long road, and I'm sure you're on it as well. So, yeah.
Further questions? Did you put your hand up, by the way, when I asked about troublemakers? Questions? A gentleman here, so the lady there, because she's got the microphone close, and then the gentleman here. So the lady, yes, in the black dress, and then the gentleman here in the second row, I think.
Hello everybody, Jo Walker from the Northern Sydney Local Health District Health Promotion Service. My question is really kind of the flavour of the week even. Population doesn't seem to have been an issue for you, and I just wondered why? And just a general comment about that. The other thing is that I would like to know a bit more from Peter about how we move from topophilia to biophilia a bit quicker.
So can I just clarify your first question, John? When you said
population.
isn't an issue. It mo-
But
can you
just,
just
it's just,
No, no,
like- it was just
it
that
wasn't
it was
raised by
just
us,
presented as lots of people moving around all together, and then it's kind of okay.
Okay.
And I'm just thinking, well, you know, we're about to hit 25
Okay,
million.
thank you. I just wasn't quite
Yeah.
clear what the focus was.
Yeah.
Anyone like to have a go at
I
Peter?
did talk about it. Maybe you missed it. The slide on Tokyo was meant to be how I dismissed the whole of Four Corners in one slide. 38 million, and it works. It is possible. I used to work with Paul Ehrlich. I thought population was the biggest issue, and then I became a local government councillor, and we desperately needed population in our city because it was in decline. Look, I think that population can be an issue if you don't deal with the infrastructure. If you do, it can be a better place.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Gentlemen? Put your hand up if you want to ask a question.
Tom
Okay,
Groscoff
you'll be
from
next.
Transport for New South Wales. I loved all the ideas and the incubation of all those ideas. I guess what I'm curious is, how do you draw that up in scale? I mean, we've got a city that's growing at an incredible rate, and we've got a lot of green fields and brown fields development. How do we bring some of this stuff up in scale?
Stuff up. That's a good word.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was me, but I've got a few thoughts on that question. One is that I see cities as like collections of small neighbourhoods, and I think that we should be doing our best to support those neighbourhoods to thrive and to do what they do best. I think where we get stuck is thinking that we have to do everything, and if you were as a central agency or as even as a local government thinking that you needed to activate every street and every part, well, impossible. But there are people living in every place, and I think our role is to more create the enabling environment for that to occur, and that's where I see scale happening at a practical delivery level. But that style of thinking, of being more agile, more experimental, understanding that we're living in an uncertain world where we don't quite know what the future is. We can prototype and test things in different ways that isn't a one-to-one physical prototype. We can do it with other scenario modelling but I guess my point is that we want to be doing that in a collaborative way that brings in more voices than are currently at the table.
Do you want to comment on that?
Look, and I would agree. We find we get involved in a lot of cycling projects, and sometimes we just spin our wheels because we're just thinking grand all the time. We've got a plan, and it's like we need to prepare this plan, and we've got these great ideas, but there's so many barriers in the way. And for years, that cycling strategy, for example, can sit there and the wheels just spin. But it's actually just the very small, tiny little changes that can then start to lead to more bigger things. And I think we just have to, as Lucinda's saying, just think of everything on a smaller scale, give it a go, try it. One small improvement might then make 10 more people cycle or 10 more people walk, and then it starts to get more and more momentum. And then we just got to go grassroots, get going with it, rather than just thinking, oh, if we can't do the big final gold-plated piece, well, we might as well not bother. Just a small improvement can improve people's lives so dramatically and really start to get that community buy-in.
Yeah, can I just add, I think it's important to get the big picture in a general kind of way that you're needing to do, but you have to open yourself up to enable a process that will get the community and the private sector involved, because the private sector have so many more solutions than you're going to dream up in your office. And too much top-down stuff is still happening when the community and private sector innovations are just desperate to get out and do it. So you just got to be able to relax a bit more. Look, I've worked in these offices, I know how it happens, and I just think we do too much planning at that level and not enough at the local level to enable the processes to happen.
Thank you.
Hello, Liz Christensen, community member and formerly in New South Wales Health. I'd like to ask the panel to comment on this, but I was really interested to hear Fiona share her story about not feeling well and staying at home. And what she highlighted is also the absolute lack of need to travel, like that there wasn't any need for her to travel. And in fact, if she could have taken that further and maybe have worked from home, and she may well have done that. And so what are your views about increasing people's access to working from home? Because it's talked a lot about, and it doesn't happen that much. Certainly in the government sector it doesn't. And also about building places so that people's work is near them, so that they can walk to work or cycle, rather than commuting from Western Sydney, from Campbelltown into the city. So the whole concept of reducing the need for travel.
The ideas of working from home and not needing to come to work has been around a long time, and it's nearly always failed because most work is about creative face-to-face interactions. You cannot do knowledge economy jobs from home unless you're following up on the work that's already been done face-to-face. So this is much better than doing a webinar, right? It is necessary to meet. So in the last 20 years, cities have come back in around that idea. And all of the utopians who said, we will never need to travel again, we just sit at home in our bushland setting and enjoy it, were so bored stiff they got on the train and came to work, because it is a people thing. And it will continue to be. I don't think city centres are going to get less important. They're going to get more important. But you can have city centres throughout the city. And Sydney's doing that better than almost any of the car-based cities I've worked with. So getting those sub-centres to be genuine cities so that there is local cities close by for knowledge economy work.
And I think it comes down to, as Peter's saying, we can all work from home. Generally, our businesses are quite flexible, but there's that need for that face-to-face. I think it's just about managing that demand. For example, with road building projects, with any type of infrastructure, and the potential problems with increased population is everybody's moving exactly the same time every day. We all start work about 9 o'clock, we end at 5, and we're building all this infrastructure to cope for that very small time of change. Whereas if we can start to spread the demand over the day, we can start to better utilise that infrastructure. So I think it's very much a cultural shift. I think face-to-face interaction is still so important, but it's maybe just trying to make, again, very small changes, starting work earlier, finishing work later, and just getting our businesses and our colleagues to sort of work that way can help definitely with infrastructure planning going forward.
Okay. Now, I've lost the person who was sitting down who I said could ask a question. All right, sorry. I'm going to take 2 questions and then come back to the panel really quickly. So that lady and then the person with the baby at the back. Have you got... so we'll take one and then the other.
Okay. Deborah Moore from the National Heart Foundation, but I'm probably asking this question more as a community member, and it was sort of touched on the population question. Where is the decision being made about how far we go into greenfield space to develop, and how far that goes to building on land that is potential agricultural land for food security, etc.? And I guess that whole, how much density is going to be good for this activation and the healthy cities, walkable cities, and then how much needs to be left as biodiversity rather than biophilic?
Oh, okay. My name's Ali. I'm a local bike shop owner, and not to big note ourselves, but we think we have an existing solution about health and transport problems, which is an electric bicycle. As everyone knows, it's growing worldwide. Like, sales in electric bikes are 200%, while normal bikes are dropping by 20%. And it's kind of a cheeky question, but like, maybe Peter, would you want to work with us to do a research project about, how to like, map that?
Yeah, I've got 3 PhDs already on it. Look, it is no doubt, it's a different mode. I have an electric bike and it is significantly better for getting that little extra distance. It isn't a total solution because if you have to go 70 kilometres to commute, you won't do it on an electric bike, but you will if it's 7 kilometres. And so there are still these issues, and the issues of sprawl, which the other question raised, are there. Who decides on those? I think as much as anything it's us, because if you are still demanding a big place with lots of space around it and cheap, and you don't mind driving, then you'll buy out there. And if the market's there, all kinds of ways are found to get around any kind of planning restrictions. If you want to stop it by putting in a hard wall around the city, there's almost no success stories around the world of where that's worked. You have to change the culture and the economy of it. And Sydney's done pretty well. 90% of development has occurred back into the city. Perth's only doing 50%. So we've got a lot of land we're losing, but it's a lot less than we used to because the demand is there for higher density back in, and the need for less and less on the fringe is happening as much as anything because those are the places that are turning into the slums of the future. Remember how we used to say, oh, high rise is going to be the slum of the future. They were the old 60s flats, but not anymore. The slums of the future are so far away, it is impossible to have any proper servicing or proper public transport. And in America, that's very, very clear now. And that's the potential. I think the economics of it, as much as anything, will be the wall around the city that stops it. But I don't think it's easy, and every local government's got to be very pleased to see development back into the city rather than trying to stop it because of, oh, we don't like density. And that's really a big theme today. Like it, it's important.
Quick comments and then we're going to need to go to morning two. Amy, do you want to start? Or?
Just talking about the cycling issue. Electric bikes, great technology. But again, we need the infrastructure to enable it to be safe for people to cycle. We need low stress cycling infrastructure so people of any age and ability can get on their bike regardless if it's manual pedalled or is it electric.
The only comment I'd make is I just, having worked a lot in Asia, I see that their greenfield is also high density, but equally has the same issues as our greenfield in terms of it's away from jobs and transport and things. So it's not necessarily as black and white as a high density, low density situation, but the building far away from infrastructure, jobs and services is just impossible and will create the slums of the future. And I really want an electric bike with baby seat, please. Thanks.
Well, let me tell you, thank you. A friend who has an electric bike, about 2 weeks ago, we were at a picnic in the Domain. He said, oh, have a ride. So I got on it. If you've never ridden an electric bike, beware. When when you normally just start pedalling and you start and you take off, that's fine. I started pedalling, whoosh! God, it shoots away from you as soon as you start pedalling. It goes a million miles an hour, so be careful.